When you're a child, everyone tells you to dream big. Teachers, adults, parents, they're just like, do what you want to do. And then as you get older, society and the education system starts telling you to go for what's within your reach.
When I think about school, I think about waking up in the morning and not wanting to go to school. All the stress that I have doing all these assignments, tests that's coming up. I feel like it's just really stressful, and I feel like that's a really big problem.
When I was young, I was probably the most creative kid out there. I would take anything in my disposal. I would take forks and knives and spoons and just make drum beats with them. And I would sing every chance I got. I would dance every chance I got. So I was kind of like, I don't know, I just had a lot of fun when I was a child.
All of my ambitions as a kid was unrealistic or unstable, and people would just laugh at me if I told them like, oh hey, I want to be a singer. And if I told my mom or dad that, they would probably be disappointed as well. You're kind of expected to have a good ambition, like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be like a dentist or anything like that. And it actually worked, because I actually want to become a dentist now.
I had this urge to become a mailman. Then I changed my mind, I wanted to become a singer, and then a computer scientist and a video game developer. And I just wanted to become so many things, and I guess that's kind of what happens when you're a child. You have this huge creative space in your mind, and it just gives you so much freedom to imagine, and I think that's really important.
I think the education system is the same as it was in every yearbook photo I've ever seen. Things look the same. Rows of kids, teachers at the front of the class, rectilinear structures that look like factories. So I think in many ways the educational system is identical to its original purpose.
It has to be more about creativity and problem solving. And so, no, I don't think education really reflects that yet.
There's just so many different kinds of learners, and we understand there's a disparity between students now, and that you can still be smart even if you don't test well, or even if you aren't good at expressing yourself on paper and you would rather do a talk or a presentation. That shouldn't take away from your overall level of intelligence or how people are perceived.
I don't think the curriculum is the problem. I think the curriculum is easy to change. It's easy to say, from now on we want kids to know what iPads are, or from now on we want kids to stop handwriting and type more. Those types of expectations are easy to change. I think changing educational perceptions is the hardest part.
The issue is when you are doing a project, you often don't do a project based on the way that you want to interpret it. You do it in a way that it will satisfy the teacher that you are giving the project to in order to maximize your marks. And the value of learning just doesn't exist anymore. Like younger students always, I found that a lot of kids really wanted to learn and found interest in learning something new, but just the only thing that matters is marks. If you're asking like who a good teacher is someone who will give you good grades and have, easy tests. It's not someone that's going to teach you something new necessarily. And I find that that's highly uncommon with teachers too, to actually try and teach you when you know that all that matters is good grades, because there's very few universities who even consider your extracurricular activities, and the ones that do, it's even more stressful because students drop all of these extracurriculars in order to maintain a certain grade. And the grades that are required, some teachers bell curve them. It's just not a fair playing field.
The marks are getting higher and higher, right? Like, everyone needs to get 90 plus, or so I think it does kind of change the learning environment, because the brain is kind of fixated on the future and everything becomes high stakes, which is, then you can't take risk, you can't push kids, you can't be creative, right? And so I think it needs re-examining.
Marks are the currency. Marks are the way that people measure their success, or the way that people socialize, or the way that people talk with their teachers. Everything seems to revolve around this. I don't know that there's any solution to that right now.
So the education system not only encourages you to drop creative stuff as soon as possible, but it's also telling you that there's one certain way to do it. So when I was in grade 9, I had to pick if I wanted to continue with music, with phys ed, or with French, in order to get like a higher level French fluency certificate. And so for me, I had to decide whether I was going to drop my only remaining arts course, or not do any physical activity during the school day, because I had already dropped most of my sports at that point due to school, or continue with this French fluency, which I was told was very important, and that, my fluency wasn't as valid otherwise. The idea of just the fact that if you want to take art, you will have to sacrifice another part of your future is just, it's telling kids that, like, if you are artistic, then you are not as valid, you are not as smart, and you won't go anywhere. You always hear you can't get anything with an arts degree, right? It's so, I had to drop gym, I stopped taking any music lessons, I dropped out of the string orchestra, and now my grades are really high. So it's saying that, like, I'm being rewarded for giving up all of my passions and for conforming into the little box of taking sciences and maths, and giving up all of my creativity.
Now, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong. And by the time they get to be adults, most kids have lost that capacity. They have become frightened of being wrong. And we run our companies this, by the way. We stigmatize mistakes. And we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is that we are educating people out of their creative capacities.
I think that getting into university, which seems to be the goal of most students that I teach, getting into university and college is harder than being in university and college. The process to get into a university requires so much stress and pressure. And when you're there, I feel like the stress is always there, but it's different. I don't think anxiety about it is healthy, and I think anxiety about marks is actually a symptom of a larger mental health piece in our society.
The rates of anxiety and depression in children are skyrocketing, not just because of the progression of technology over time, which has been cited as a primary source. However, if you talk to kids, you can find that just a main source is just an unreasonable workload, and it's taking up too much of their free time, and the school system is just a very toxic work environment, and there's just, I don't know, it seems kind of hopeless. It's going in the wrong direction, and kids' mental health is deteriorating at a huge accelerated rate. Kids as young, like kids who haven't even hit double digits, are talking about depression and suicide, and that's just not an appropriate environment to be putting children, especially since they are our future and we want them to be actually successful and doing well, not just put into little boxes where they hate themselves.
I would love to teach in Finland. I would love to experience that. And I think the reason why it's so successful is that everyone has the same vision, right? And so they all prioritize education. Their teachers go to, they're like doctors. Like getting into teachers' college is like becoming a physician, right? So their whole worldview about education is completely different. And it's a radical shift in the way we do things. I think Canada's a pretty good education system. It has a lot more to go and grow. But yeah, I think they're doing what we need to do for the future, right? It's problem-based, it's topic-driven, because they know that they can access the content at any time from anywhere. And what's interesting about their studies too is that even immigrant populations that come to Finland do just equally as well. So it's not this idea that it's because it's a Finnish culture, right? And kids have more freedom, right? And parent-teacher interviews are there's no parent-teacher interview in high school. It's between you and me. So it's very progressive.
Do I like the idea of shifting the focus into dialogue-driven, project-based learning, a celebration of ideas instead of marks? Of course. That sounds amazing. I'd love if we could, celebrate people's, great ideas. I do. I think that'd be interesting. And I like the idea of topic-based learning more than I like the idea of, subject-based learning.
That seems like something where students are actually engaged and interested, and kids learn better when they care. Like, so many people right now don't care about anything except for their grades because they were told that grades are the only important thing. So that model of education has obviously been proven to work if we remove standardized tests and things that influence kids to just do what they're supposed to, quote unquote, to be successful, despite the idea of success being based on a completely trivial aspect that's very suitable for one type of person.
I just hope that nobody else calls me in between.
But it wouldn't stop the call or anything, right?
No, it's just I don't think it buzzes or anything. Hello?
Hello, this is John Malloy calling from the board office.
Hi, Director Malloy.
Hello.
This is Christopher, and I'm with my partner, Arlene.
Hello, nice to meet you.
How are you?
We're good.
We're great.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
No problem. Any insights I can offer, I certainly am happy to do so.
Yeah, we actually have a few questions laid out. So the first question is, for many years, the education system still comprises of standardized tests and traditional in-class teaching and learning style. We were wondering if you think this should be changed, given that not all students learn the same way.
I think a little bit of standardized testing to give us a bit of a sense on how well we're doing. Not so much how well the student is doing, this is my opinion, but how well the system is doing, how well we're supporting you to be effective students.
For the tests that we have during the curriculum, during our school year, do you think it's good that the teachers would mark each student the same way? Or do you think we should just base off our marks off of assignments more so than tests per se?
Well, my opinion I'm going to talk about assessment.
Yes.
Assessment is how we not only determine how our students are doing, but we also provide feedback so you can do even better. So assessment is not supposed to be an end result. I've always worried about students who came up to me when I was a teacher in a high school saying, "Sir, what's my mark? What's my mark? Sir, I need a few more percentage points. Sir," that's not the purpose of learning for me. Assessment is important. We have to know how well we're doing. We have to know how to do better. And what I call the assessment loop is the way to do that. So whether it's an assignment, a quiz, or a test, my big issue is, as long as it's forcing you to think, to be creative, to really have to analyze, synthesize, and problem solve, to communicate effectively, that's the kind of assessment that I think really improves student learning. So for me, it's less about tests or quizzes or assignments, because that's kind of the tool. For me, it's more about how those tools, tests, quizzes, assignments, are actually helping you think helping you create, helping you communicate, because again, whether it's written or oral, it's still communication, in order to become better and better and better. That's my view of assessment, tests, quizzes, and assignments.
So as a student, I actually realized that nowadays some students are too afraid to be ambitious with their projects because they would fear of like making mistakes, or like they would be afraid of lowering their current mark. So do you think in a way education is kind of limiting students' creativity?
I would say that it shouldn't. And if it is, we got to figure out why. I'm a firm believer that when you take risks, when you're really ambitious, and you push the envelope, if I can use that term,
Yes.
then it actually allows you to learn all kinds of things. And I think that, you know, the standard or the rubric or the expectations that you're asked to fulfill hopefully leave you a lot of room to do that kind of work, so that you can feel confident that being creative is really, really something that's celebrated, not hindered. If our learning environments are making you feel that way, where you just want to kind of do the safe stuff so that you can get the better marks, so that you can, you know, do really well and get on to university or whatever, if that's all we're teaching you, then I think we need to listen to you and be challenged by you.
Yeah.
For sure.
For a few years now, Finland has been the model of a successful education system because they don't have standardized tests and subjects are replaced with topics. What are your thoughts on this system?
I think they really honor the student's interests, passions, and strengths. I think that the learning environment really brings students together so that they can really explore and be curious and be creative. And I think that it's got a lot of effective aspects to it. I think there's a lot for us to learn from Finland. I think we're already doing that. And I think that our biggest challenge is, because high school, of course, is connected to what are you going to do next? Are you going to go to university? Are you going to go to college? Are you going to go to apprenticeship? Are you going to go to work?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And because it's so connected to what's happening afterwards, I think students get nervous, for instance, if they want to go to a certain university, that, oh my goodness, if I don't get a certain mark, I can never go. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is they start trying to figure out how to get that mark, as opposed to really trying to figure out how to learn.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I wish we could work closely with our colleges and universities and our apprenticeship placements and say, can we do this a little differently so that we're not curbing students' excitement and energy and engagement and curiosity because we're too afraid of marks and we're too afraid we won't get to the next place. So I think Finland's got a bunch of that sorted out.
In relation to our current education system, do you think there would be any changes that you would make, like for how the education system is currently, or no?
Well, I actually think it's connected to where we don't have examples of all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The creative learning, the critical thinking, the student interest, the student voice, the ability for you to own the learning, to work with your classmates, to solve real live issues and problems that face our schools and our communities. Like, that's the kind of learning that I think makes the biggest difference. In other words, I think students are the best social justice agents we've got. Are we giving you room to do that? And I think sometimes we don't. And where we don't, we've got to open the doors on that and figure out how to be able to do that better. So that's the change that I would look for.
So I think that wraps up all the questions.
Yep.
Is there anything
Excellent. Well, I hope that was helpful.
Thank you so much for your time.
It helped us so much. Thank you.
Have a great night, okay?
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. The first step to fixing a problem is to identify it. And what better is to get the students to identify the problem so we can work together to fix this.
School is a good thing, and it teaches us so much, but when it starts eating away at our creativity and starts limiting our possibilities of what we can and cannot do, that's when something needs to change. And I think that is also when students need to step up and let our voices be heard, because that's truly the most important factor in making a change.